My name is Rumi, and I grew up in a house where the air was never still. My father worked as a funeral director, but he treated his profession with an enthusiasm that felt almost theatrical. He believed that every coffin should be a place of comfort, and he recorded elaborate advertisements describing each detail with dramatic pride. Hearing his voice echo through the rooms made me feel as though I lived in a theatre built for the dead. My mother existed in a different world, one shaped by strange fragrances and stranger ideas. She called herself an experimental scent maker, creating perfumes inspired by emotions no one wanted to feel. Fresh Divorce, Library Basement, and Regret on a Tuesday were her favourites. She often spoke as though scents revealed the truth hidden inside a person, but her words carried a sharpness that left small wounds. Perhaps because of all this, I grew up with a temper that rose quickly. School offered little balance. My grades were unremarkable, and I rarely felt seen. My closest friend was Mira, a gentle girl who seemed too soft for the world. I often protected her, especially from her stepmother, a woman who called herself a psychic and behaved like a faded villain from an old tale. Mira lived with her younger brother Kai, who frequently fell ill. One evening, after Kai developed a fever, I brought both of them to my house. As we approached, I heard something unusual, my mother laughing with genuine joy. Inside the living room sat a handsome boy, slightly older than us. My mother introduced him as our cousin from France, and she insisted I call him Brother Ginu, even though I had never heard his name before. In that moment, something quiet inside me shifted. A stranger had entered my life, and I sensed that nothing would stay the same. From the very first night, Brother Ginu behaved as though he had always lived in our home. He moved with calm confidence, offering polite smiles that somehow made me feel unsettled. My mother seemed enchanted by him. She served dishes she usually avoided cooking, carefully arranging plates as though preparing a banquet for a treasured guest. Even my father, who rarely warmed to strangers, spoke to him with surprising fondness. Yet the longer I watched Ginu, the more uncertain I felt. His elegance was effortless, but there were moments when his eyes drifted toward distant thoughts, as if he carried a heavy secret. Still, he treated Mira and Kai with gentle kindness, and Kai, who often hid behind Mira, slowly began to follow him around like a timid sparrow learning to trust a new branch. Despite Ginu's generosity, tension settled inside me. He took the only bathroom for long stretches of time, played short videos on full volume, and sprawled across the couch as though it belonged solely to him. His presence rearranged the rhythm of our home. My mother even insisted that I move out of my own room so that he could sleep comfortably. I was given the couch, a trade that felt like an invisible eviction. School remained my only refuge until the morning I found Mira surrounded by a group of girls known for their cruelty. Their laughter echoed through the hallway as they mocked her trembling hands. Something hot surged in my chest, and before I could think, I stepped into the circle. When their leader sneered at me, implying that my father would bury them alive, my anger burst like a sudden storm. I lunged. My hands moved before my thoughts could catch them. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of bodies shifting and books scattering. It was only when the principal rushed in that the sharp edge of reality returned. Yet even then, something inside me snapped. The principal's face twisted into something monstrous in my vision, and all the frustration I had swallowed for years erupted uncontrollably. Teachers pulled me away, their voices distant and muffled. When my senses finally cleared, fear filled the room. Students stared at me as though I had transformed into a creature they could no longer understand. The weight of my actions pressed down on me, and I knew I could not escape punishment. With trembling hands, I called the last person I wanted to rely on, Brother Ginu. As the phone rang, I wondered whether asking for his help would turn out to be a blessing or the beginning of something far more complicated. When Ginu arrived at the principal's office, the air shifted, as though someone had opened a hidden window. The principal sat in his chair, nursing bruises that darkened slowly like ripening storm clouds. Two nurses hovered at his side, whispering instructions he immediately ignored. I sat stiffly on the opposite chair, my hands clenched tightly, as though pressing down on my own guilt. Ginu bowed politely to everyone in the room, his voice calm enough to soften the unease. "I apologize for Rumi's behavior," he said, his tone both respectful and disarmingly sincere. To my astonishment, he then spoke of repairing the school's digital locks, fixing the cracked pavement, and ensuring safety for students who are the future of our society. His words sounded too polished, too mature for someone his age. Yet the principal, flustered by Ginu's composure and generosity, lowered his anger like a man surrendering a sword he could no longer hold. My suspension remained unavoidable, but the disaster I imagined had dissolved into something I could manage. When we stepped outside into the sharp morning air, Ginu scolded me with a mix of frustration and genuine concern. His reprimands stung, yet beneath them I sensed kindness, an unfamiliar warmth that confused me. But peace did not last long. Only a few days into my suspension, Mira's younger brother Kai collapsed at home. Mira's frantic call pulled me and my father to her house, where we found her kneeling beside Kai's small, trembling body. The ambulance rushed him to the hospital, where time became painfully slow. Mira's stepmother arrived dressed in shining jewelry, speaking about crystals and cosmic energy as though her words could replace medical care. The doctor, stern and exhausted, explained that Kai needed immediate surgery. While Mira pleaded with her stepmother for help, the woman simply shook her head and insisted her healing amethyst was more powerful than medicine. It was then that Ginu entered the hallway with the certainty of someone who had already made a decision. He informed the doctor that he would cover every expense. His voice held no hesitation, and the timing was so perfect that it felt almost unreal. Mira cried with relief, gripping my sleeve as though she had been given permission to breathe again. As Kai was taken into the operating room, I looked at Ginu. His gentle expression was unchanged, but for the first time, I wondered what kind of boy carried such generosity wrapped in a cloak of mystery. His presence eased the fear in Mira's heart, yet cast longer shadows in mine. The more Ginu helped us, the more I sensed that something about him remained hidden, like a lantern that glowed beautifully, yet refused to reveal what lay behind its light. Kai's surgery succeeded, yet complications kept him in the hospital for many days. During that time, I stayed by Mira's side, while Ginu visited every afternoon with food and gentle encouragement. The rhythm of our days softened. We played small games to distract Mira, whispered stories beside Kai's bed, and occasionally laughed quietly until a nurse glared at us, reminding us that laughter carried a price within hospital walls. One evening, after Kai finally fell asleep, Ginu and I wandered toward the vending machines. The hallway was dim, filled with the faint hum of machines and distant footsteps. As I reached for a bottle of water, something struck my ankle. A toddler, barefoot and sticky with fruit candy, had thrown his juice box before collapsing into loud cries. Without hesitation, I lifted him gently. His small hands trembled before he placed a melted gummy bear into my palm, as though offering gratitude. A woman rushed toward us, her voice sharp with accusation. She insisted I had harmed her child and threatened to call hospital security. I felt anger rise, but when I saw the exhaustion in her eyes and the tear stains on her other children's faces, the anger dissolved. Instead, I asked softly, "How are you, ma'am?" Her shoulders fell as though someone had loosened the tightness around her heart. She cried, confessing how difficult life had become. I listened, offering the comfort I rarely knew how to give. When I returned to Ginu, he stared at me with an expression that blended surprise and admiration. "You handled that with such grace," he murmured. like someone stepping carefully across a fragile bridge. I brushed off the compliment, but his words lingered. The next morning, while waiting for Jinu to pick us up, Mira and I passed the hospital cafeteria. On a mounted television, a news report played silently. A young man named Stephen Heaven was wanted for armed robbery and attempted murder after escaping custody. His hair was different, and his eyes were the wrong color, yet the shape of his face struck me like a cold wave. It was Jinu. Mira stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. Without speaking, we gathered our belongings and left the hospital immediately. Throughout the ride home, my thoughts spiraled like leaves in a restless wind. Each moment with Jinu replayed in my mind, not fading but shifting into unfamiliar shapes. When we reached my house, the silence felt heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Something was wrong, and I feared that whatever truth waited inside would unravel everything I had begun to believe. The house was too quiet when Mira and I arrived. I called out for my parents, but no voices answered. The stillness felt unnatural, as though the walls had been emptied of breath. Mira went to check the basement, and when she did not return, fear anchored itself in my chest. I hurried after her. The moment I opened the basement door, a hand pulled me inside. Jinu stood there, his expression shadowed by something I could not read. My parents sat, bound to chairs, along with Mira and Kai. The air felt heavy with despair. When I whispered his name, he sighed, as though releasing the last warmth he had been holding. "Do not make me use violence," he said quietly. Yet there was sorrow in his voice, not cruelty. I tried to speak gently. "I know who you are now, but I also know you are not the monster they claim." His eyes flickered, but he silenced me and turned toward the door. In a swift motion, he lifted Kai into his arms and disappeared into the fading light above the stairs. Mira screamed his name, but he was already gone. Not long after, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation burst into the house. They announced that my father had been arrested for aiding a fugitive, even though he had known nothing. As they led him away, something inside me grew still. Not anger, not despair, but a clarity I had never felt before. I understood where Jinu would go. The beach was quiet when I arrived, washed in pale evening light. A kite danced in the sky, and beneath it stood Jinu with Kai beside him. When he saw me, he lowered the kite string slowly, as if lowering the last piece of his borrowed life. He told me everything, how his father, broken by grief, had attempted to rob his own bank, how Jinu had tried to stop him in disguise, and how he alone had been blamed. His voice trembled not with fear, but with longing for a childhood he never had. Before I could respond, agents surrounded us. Jinu raised his hands peacefully. As they led him away, he looked at me with a faint, grateful smile. "You were the best part of all of this," he whispered. Months later, after sacrifices, sleepless nights, and a lawyer who believed in the fragile weight of truth, Jinu walked out of court a free man. I ran to him, and for the first time, the future felt wide enough for both of us. Some people run from their past, others run towards something better, and sometimes, if one is lucky, the paths meet.